My mother-in-law cancelled my apartment's contract without asking me.
You married into our family. So how can you expect you'll be living with just my son and grandson? It's your job as our daughter-in-law to take care of us too. Try to avoid that. You really haven't been raised well. This situation made me feel dizzy and overwhelmed. Movers who I hadn't hired entered my home and began taking away my furniture. Well, from now on you'll be living with us. You should prepare yourself. My mother-in-law said that with a grin on her face. My mother-in-law suppressed my father-in-law and did anything she wanted. I was happy that at least my father-in-law was a kind person, but this was too much. I couldn't hold myself back any longer. I had reached my limit. No, I've already passed my limit, which is why I came prepared. Understood. Well, of course. Since this has been decided, quickly, I cut off my mother-in-law as she was speaking and pulled out the thing I had prepared. Just like you canceled the contract to my home without asking me, I ended my marriage with your son without telling you. Huh? At the moment, she understood everything, and her face went pale. My name is Isla. It's been 3 years since I married to my husband, Asher. Asher and I are currently living together in a studio apartment my parents bought me. My parents manage a company and are very well off, though I've turned down their financial help since I started working and living on my own. This house was a wedding gift, so I had no choice but to accept. This is to celebrate your wedding, so at least let us do this much. When my dad said that, I couldn't refuse. Asher was happy that we could live together comfortably, and seeing him like that made me happy as well. Our married life went well, and we ended up having a child relatively quickly. Marriage, pregnancy, and the birth of our son, Gabriel. It was the happiest and the busiest time of my life. It passed by like a whirlwind. After meeting my in-laws before the wedding, I rarely saw them. Asher's parents' home was far away, and it was a hassle for his parents to come visit us. My father-in-law was an executive in his company, so he couldn't take long vacations. So generally, we would share updates about our son over the phone. Even though we can see you over video calls, it's lonely not having you visit in person. My mother-in-law said that every time we spoke over video call. I wanted to visit them occasionally, but I had so much to do. And since her son was so young, I was worried about traveling a long distance with him. I also still wasn't fully recuperated from giving birth. All I could do was let out a dry laugh and apologize. Days and months passed, and our son turned 3 years old. I still can't keep my eyes off him, but he's grown up to be a very good boy. And he even helps me out sometimes. Around that time, my mother-in-law began visiting us more often. Until now, she had said she couldn't visit because my father-in-law couldn't take vacations. So I wondered how and why she started visiting more often now. At first, she would only come once every few months. But she started visiting us more and more, to the point she was at our home every week. I've made a new friend recently. They drive me to here, my mother-in-law said, handing a new toy to Gabriel. Asher's father isn't with you? He's really busy. Even today he's working. My mother-in-law didn't seem to care much as she answered. Since Gabriel has gotten bigger, why don't you come over to our house? As a wife, it's your job to visit us. My mother-in-law spoke to me spitefully as she hugged Gabriel. But even if he's gotten bigger,
He's still only 3 years old. He hasn't had much experience traveling long distances. And I'm still teaching him manners and how to act outside our house. Asher is also busy with work. And it's hard fitting a trip into his schedule. I'm sure Asher had spoken to his mother about this. But she just wanted to be mean to me. Even when Gabriel was a baby, you would just let us see him over video calls. It was so sad. My neighbors are all looking forward to meeting Gabriel. My mother-in-law looked across the room and let out a sigh. I wonder if living in this fancy house is what makes you feel like you are so important. I would never know how to react when she said this. Gabriel has also said he doesn't like his grandma much. I'm sure he could feel that his grandma was mean to me, even if he couldn't understand what she was saying. She started visiting us so often that it felt like a problem. I asked Asher to talk to her about it. Suddenly, shortly after, we got a call that Asher's father had collapsed. Asher quickly took time off, and we headed to his parents' house together. Your dad suddenly collapsed while he was working. We went to the hospital and took some tests, and it seems it's nothing life-threatening. But his arms and legs are still a bit numb, so he needs to be taken care of. He's put aside his work for now, and is reading in his bedroom. Since the first time I met my father-in-law, he's always been a quiet person. He didn't say much, but he was always interested to hear about Gabriel. He would send us money and gifts for Gabriel, and in general, always treated us well. Though my mother-in-law seemed very worried, he was calm. I can't work like I did before, but I've saved enough money that we don't have to worry. It's not like I can't work at all anyway. It's not that serious, so you don't have to worry too much. His hands were a bit shaky as he closed the book he was reading. My mother-in-law ignored that and turned to me. Since he's like this, why don't you move in with us to help take care of him? I don't know what I'll do on my own. And since you are our daughter-in-law, you should at least do this much. But we have our apartment. I was worried about my father-in-law, but I wouldn't accept this that easy. We already signed Gabriel's up for preschool in our area. And considering my mother-in-law's personality, she'll bother me every day. I turned to Asher, hoping he would be on my side. But he was nodding along with what his mother said. Won't you be quiet? I'm telling you that's not necessary. So Isla and Asher don't need to move in. Don't force them into it. My father-in-law's words hang in the air. The situation was settled. That day we were able to return home without a problem. But my mother-in-law began to harass me more. Ayla, I want you to help me. Get here, quickly. She would call me to say that at least once a week. At first, I believed her, and I would rush over. But each time it was for something unimportant. There's a bug in the kitchen. Catch it for me. I need to pull the weeds from the garden. Help me. You got here too late. I've already resolved my problem. Every time it'd be something like that. But I knew if I ignored her, it would become a huge drama. So I had no choice but to go every time. You know, that we live far away. So coming here isn't that easy, right? Please, don't call me over if it's not actually urgent. If you lived here, you wouldn't have to do this. You are living leisurely, trying to forget that my husband and I exist.
That's why I'm making you travel this distance. It's your fault, not mine. My mother-in-law always acted like she was the victim. I'm sure your husband isn't happy with this. Him? He's only concerned with himself. And I won't listen to a man who can't work anymore. Whatever he says, I don't care. As she was saying this, my mother-in-law's friend called her on the phone. I'm going to meet my friend now. So, you can go home. If I have any more problems, I will call you. Mentally exhausted, I set out on a long journey back home. I've spoken to Asher about this countless times, but he just says the same thing as his mother. I can't move because of my work here. But you are not working, so what's wrong with you moving in with them? I can take care of Gabriel. I can't leave Gabriel to be taken care of by Asher alone. Little by little, I became more upset with Asher and his mother. Thinking about Gabriel, I was worried about him growing up in this sort of environment. I secretly decided to take things into my own hands. One day, I went with Gabriel to the neighborhood grocery store, and when we got home, I saw movers walking around in front of my apartment building. I wondered who in our building could be moving. But as I got closer to my door, I saw that the movers were coming in and out of my apartment. Surprised, I asked the movers what was going on, and they said they were hired to come. When I entered the apartment, I saw Asher and his mother ordering the movers around. Oh, Isla, you're late. What's happening? You keep turning down moving in with us. So I came here to get you. I was full of anger, but my mother-in-law looked at me with a smile. It's your fault not listening to what I say. But don't worry, I won't blame you. You'll be taking care of us from now on, so I will make sure we get along. I decided talking would get me nowhere with my mother-in-law, so I glared at Asher. You're making a scary face. We received this apartment as a present, so we're free to sell it or leave it as we please, right? I'm also worried about my parents. Since you have free time, you can move in with them. We'll all be happy. Won't that be great? Haven't you thought about how Gabriel and I feel? Gabriel will make new friends, and you can find a part-time job out there. If we are worried about money, we can ask my parents for help. And if we sell this apartment, we'll have enough money for a while. If anything, you're at fault since you abandoned your obligations to us. If you understand, get ready to leave. Seeing how they spoke and nodded to each other without considering my feelings, I couldn't take it anymore. Fine. Yeah, I got it. I hugged Gabriel tightly and gave the biggest smile I could muster. In that case, I'm breaking up with Asher. Asher was at a loss for words. Huh? Isla, what do you mean? As I said, I'm ready to get divorced. So I leave the rest to you. If you have any complaints, speak to my lawyer. I've recorded our conversation where you talk about how you will force me to move in with your parents. I also have recordings and text message histories showing how your mother treated me. It's better for you to not overthink this and just divorce me. I went into our bedroom and brought out the divorce papers I had prepared. Wait! Do you think we will let you get away with this? Don't you pity Gabriel? Gabriel was surprised by his grandma's sudden yelling, and he began to cry. Grandma, it's scary. I don't like Grandma. Surprised to hear Gabriel's cries,
The movers all peeked in to see what was happening. I'm sure they could tell who was the bad person here. Listen to what Gabriel is saying. It seems he won't mind. I'll move in with my parents for a bit, so I'm not worried. My mother-in-law felt too embarrassed to continue screaming in front of the movers, so she went quiet. Having gotten back at her, I felt relieved. Asher, things will probably get tough on you from now on. But I hope you and your mom get along. She just thinks about herself. So be careful. You and I will be divorced, so she's nothing to do with me anymore. I packed a few things and got ready to leave. Anything else I need, I will buy once I get to my parents' house. Before I left our apartment, I went up to Asher. Thanks for everything. Here's my last present to you, to celebrate the end of our marriage life. As Asher stood there stunned, and with our divorce papers in hand, I handed him a few photos. The photos showed Asher's mother holding hands and walking happily with a man we didn't know. She lied that she had made a new friend. She was actually having an affair. When she would come over to visit us, he would drop her off with a kiss. I saw them kissing on our apartment building's security camera and hired a private investigator to confirm everything. She probably planned to force me to do everything when I moved in with her, so that she could have more time for her affair. Seeing the photo, Asher's face went bright red, and he began to scream at his mom.
What is this? Didn't you say you were taking care of Dad? You're wrong. That's not me.
My mother-in-law's voice was shaky, and I wondered what would happen from now on. But I don't have anything to do with them anymore, so I can't just stand around and watch them forever. I stepped out of the apartment. After speaking to the movers, I made a phone call. How are you feeling? Yeah, everything is over. On the other side of the phone, my father-in-law replied in a quiet voice.
You went through a lot. Sorry about that. Thanks to you, I found out about my wife's affair. You really helped me out. I will handle the rest. I'm praying for you and Gabriel's happiness.
I thanked him and hung up the phone. I'm glad I told him everything. Afterwards, my ex-father-in-law divorced his wife. She had been using my father-in-law's retirement money however she wanted. So now that she had to pay it all back, she was in trouble. I've heard she's living in a super run-down apartment now. Even though she is old and her body is weak, she has had to take multiple part-time jobs to pay off her debts. Since she no longer has time or money, her lover abandoned her, and she is living a lonely life. I heard all this from Asher. He regretted always being on his mom's side, and he called me to beg me to get back together with him. Asher said he's also annoyed by his mother's daily complaints and requests for money. Sounds rough, but when I was going through a hard time, and I tried to turn to you, you weren't there for me at all. Bye. I hung up the phone, cutting off what Asher was beginning to say. I blocked his phone number and completely cut off ties with him. Since I moved back in with my parents, I got to relax for a while. After a while, I signed Gabriel's up for a new preschool and began looking for a new job. Now that my mother-in-law is out of my life, I will work as hard as I can for the sake of my son.